down that camera and strap in. It's time for a new episode of TogChat Live. Get ready for 60 minutes of wall-to-wall photography, including photo news, tips, and your photography questions in real time, with answers from your host, Olympus Visionary Joe Edelman.
Hey, that's me. How is everybody doing? It is Wednesday night, and thanks for joining me for another live episode of TogChat. I'm Joe Edelman, and I'm your host for the next 90 minutes while we're going to talk about all things photography. And it's going to be a little different tonight, so stay tuned, okay? So listen, before we get going, as always, I need all of you to do me a favor. Please spread the word. Tell your photography friends that we are streaming live on YouTube right now. As always, Twitter, Facebook, they're the fastest ways to get the word out. Or you can click the share button underneath the video, or you can share the link, tog.chat/live. And I'm going to go ahead and put that right there in the chat window for you guys, okay? So we've got a lot of people here from all over the place. In fact, I know there's a lot of visionaries. Well, there's at least one visionary here so far. Kelly is here. Hey, Kelly. We'll talk about Kelly in a second. But there's a lot of Olympus peeps here tonight. Plus, a lot of people from all over the world. I've seen Carl, I know William's here, Susan's here, Steve was here early, Joe's here, Natasha. Thank you guys. But do me a favor, check in, let me know where you're from. It's always cool to see where people are watching from. And of course, start posting those questions. Jamie is going to hang out with me for the whole 90 minutes tonight. So lots of questions, and it doesn't have to be about people. You've got a great landscape and nature guy here with us tonight, so dump those questions in, okay? Now, before we get going, I want to take care of two really quick business things, all right? So let me just switch my screen over here so that I can get my website up. First of all, next week, busy week for me, but I'm really, really excited. So next Wednesday, I am going to be doing a social media takeover for the Pixel Connection. The Pixel Connection is in Ohio. Let's just get the screen up here so that you guys can see it. There we go. So now, what I want you guys to do, and I'm going to give you the links here, if you visit their website, down on the bottom of the page are the links for their Facebook and their Instagram feeds, right? So that's the ones that I'm going to be taking over. And I'll go ahead and I'll grab the links here for you. Here is their Instagram. So I want you guys really quick before we dive in, take a minute, go ahead and hit follow on those, because what we're going to be doing is I'm going to have a model here in the studio and I'm going to be doing a shoot. So we'll be doing a whole bunch of live streaming, posting a lot of behind the scenes shots, answering some questions, a little bit of everything. And that is going to be pretty much all day next Wednesday, right up until we start TogChat. And I've got a special guest coming for TogChat next week too. So stay tuned to find out about that. Okay. So that's on Wednesday. And then next Friday and Saturday, I'm going to be down in Austin, Texas. So I'm going to switch over to my calendar here. I'm going to be at the Precision Camera Holiday Festival, okay? I'm going to be the keynote speaker. These guys were either desperate or crazy to let me come in and do the keynote. But the cool part is I get to spend 2 whole hours each day. So 2 hours on Friday, 2 hours on Saturday. And I'm going to be doing a demo about portraits, about fashion portraiture. There we go. And you can always subscribe to my newsletter. There it is. So Friday, it's going to be about portraiture and things to avoid. And then Saturday, it's going to be all about fashion portraiture. We're going to have some models there. And if you come, you will be able to shoot the same stuff that I'm shooting, right? So I hope to meet a lot of you there. Now, the part that I know a lot of you are waiting for because you've been talking about it and chatting about it, which is really cool. I've been promising this for a while. You guys know that I had to do some computer upgrades down here in the studio and change the way I have a little bit of this set up. But finally, I am able to start doing the interviews that I have really wanted to do. So before anybody asks, yes, I will have Ken Wheeler on for an interview. Don't worry, we will sit down and we will chat with the angry photographer. But I wanted to start out with some of my new Olympus family, because the first thing I was told about becoming a visionary with Olympus is that it's like joining a family. And the worst part is I haven't actually got to meet all of them face to face yet, but I got to talk to a lot of them. And honestly, it's the most welcoming group of people that I have ever dealt with. A lot of fun. And I can't wait until I get a chance to go out and actually shoot with some of these folks. So tonight, as advertised, my guest, he comes to us from Michigan. He is probably one of the most well-known Olympus visionaries and definitely one of the most active online. And that is the one and only Jamie MacDonald. Jamie, thank you for spending the evening with me. It is great to have you here.
I'm stoked to be on, big time. This is
awesome.
So cool.
Very good. And you know what? I think a lot of people are stoked to have you here because as soon as I started posting that Jamie MacDonald was going to be here, it's like the Jamie fan club showed up, okay? So very, very cool. So Jamie, obviously all the Olympus folk that are here, they know you. Now,
Right.
One of the things that I purposely did for this interview, normally I would go out and I would dig through websites and I would read bios and all that kind of stuff. So I know a little bit about you because we've been communicating since I got involved with Olympus and became a visionary, but I purposely didn't go do research. I thought, you know what? One, I want you to tell your story, but two, I want to learn about you just like everybody else is learning about you, and we'll chat. So if you would, especially for the folks that don't know you, introduce yourself, tell us a little bit about who you are, what you do, and what makes you pick up a camera.
Sure. So it's funny. I've been in the program for 5 years now. So as far as that goes, like one of the elder in the lot of people that are in the program currently, but I feel like probably less time behind the shutter than a lot of people. I'm kind of a late comer to the world of photography. I've been shooting for about 10 years. And as you said in the introduction, I live in Michigan. Been here my whole life in the Great Lakes state. My introduction to photography was like a lot of people that are probably watching this. You know, they have a family and they wanted to document, you know, the birth of their family and the adventures and experiences together. So with some income tax return money, I went and got a camera one year. Cleared it with the financial advisor, AKA my wife. She said, this is how much you can spend. Go do with it what you must. And I actually came across a deal from Olympus back in their DSLR days. It was the E500, and it was a 2-lens kit. And I told her, I said, if I'm going to do this, I have to do it right. I have to get one of those fancy cameras that the lenses come on and off, you know, because that's how you do things.
Right.
So that was the introduction to photography for me, was wanting to document my family experience. You know, I had a newborn son, things like that.
Cool.
Little bit of an art background. So I've always been a bit of a creative type. And once I started shooting, I realized, you know, this is an art form. This is completely different than, you know, what I thought it was going to be. And it just kind of cascaded ever since. My journey to the Visionary program, if you want me to continue on with that.
Sure, go for it.
At that point, sure. It was kind of the earlier days of Twitter, and social media was just kind of really starting to blossom and grow. And I'm a tech nerd. I'm just a total geek when it comes to technology. So, and I'm an early adopter. So when Twitter came around and Facebook and everything as it comes around, I'm an early adopter and a beta tester for things as often as I can be. Yep. And it just made sense to marry my photography with Twitter at the time, so I could share pictures with as many people as possible. And it just seemed natural to mention the gear that I was using, because I was learning technology, you know, f-stops and all these things. And so I would share a photo and I'd say, you know, shot with my Olympus E500 and this lens and this aperture, you know, and people were noticing and they were saying, oh, cool, thanks for sharing the settings. And that's pretty awesome. And it got me noticed by Olympus to a degree, but not anything where they reached out to me per se. But I did kind of catch the attention of Think Tank Photo, the bag company.
Ah, very good.
And got to be really good friends with their social media guy, Simon, awesome guy. And reached out to him prior to a Kelby photo walk that I was going to host, because it was my first walk. And I thought maybe I could get Think Tank to send me a t-shirt to give away. So I reached out to Simon and he says, oh man, we love, you know, working with you. We'll give you some bags. And I said, dude, that's incredible. I would have never imagined a company giving stuff to me to hand out. I said, I wish I knew somebody like you at Olympus. And he said, well, I actually happen to know the president of Olympus Europe. And this gentleman, Mark Thakar, at the time was the president there. And he said, I'll give you his email. Send him your pitch. Send him the same pitch you sent us. You know, just explain yourself to them. And he said, don't be upset if they don't get back a hold of you. He's the president of Olympus Europe. He's probably a busy guy. I emailed Mark that same evening, got an email back from Mark saying, oh, I'm glad you reached out, Jamie. We know who you are. We follow you on social media. You know, we appreciate what you do. Sadly, I can't help you, but I took the liberty of forwarding your email off to my counterpart in the United States. About a month later, I get a message from the PR people that Olympus was working with, and kind of got this relationship going with their year. I did that for about a year. And then a year later, I just continued to do what I was doing the whole time. So sharing socially on every platform I could.
Nice.
And about a year later, I got the invite to the Visionary program. That's a really condensed version. There are a lot of things in between.
Yeah, no, hey, that's awesome, man. I mean, it's fascinating. I've talked a lot about how my relationship with Olympus, evolved and that, and I think that, there's a common perception, number one, that, once you're sponsored by a company, you're a shill. So obviously, to a degree, let's face it, we do represent the company. We do have benefits by being involved with the company. So, sure. But we love the gear. Yes. So, the challenge is each of us, we were shooters in our own right. We had followings of our own. We were people that made very conscious decisions to dedicate ourselves to this. And so that's a big part of where our value to these companies come. Right. It's not like they just reach out and write you a big check and suddenly, oh yeah, you're, no. If that were the case, I'd have a whole lot more sponsors, believe me. Because that's, right. So it's not quite that exciting. But so I'm curious. So and actually, as soon as you talked about buying your camera to be able to photograph your kids and that, the first person that came to mind actually was my buddy Manny Ortiz, because that's actually exactly how he started in photography. Cool. So you are known, obviously, for your landscapes and that, which I want to show people in a minute, but I'm going to ask you to answer one more question first. Yeah. How did you quickly, or not quickly, kind of find that niche? Because that's clearly your thing. I mean, and unlike right. any of us, you're like a machine. So for those of you that don't know Jamie, I got to tell you, one of the things that I literally, when I first became involved with Olympus and started following the different visionaries, this guy intimidated the crap out of me, because literally every day, every other day, new pictures. And I don't just mean, there's a snapshot, I took a picture of some roadkill. I mean, the guy's out generating these amazing images, and I'm like, holy crap, how does anybody do that much shooting? And the more that I followed him and gotten to know him, there's a lesson that I want you all to learn from this guy. And if he doesn't talk about it, believe me, I will point it out. But he is like a machine. This guy shoots and shoots and shoots. So finding that passion and getting to kind of your niche, how did that happen? When did you kind of realize, this is my thing?
So, well, for one thing, I think the reason I gravitate towards the nature and wildlife side of things is I've always kind of been an outdoorsy person. I'm from the generation where we played outside as kids. My children, they live in a virtual world that everything's online. Yep. My 17-year-old doesn't care to drive a car. He just meets his friends online. It's bizarre. Yep. So for me, being outdoors has always been an important thing. So naturally, I kind of leaned that route. Cool. But there was a point in time, though, when I realized that you want me to get to that pivotal moment when I knew that this was what I wanted to do, hardcore. So it was a winter morning, and I was voluntold to do an oil change for my wife's car, to take it to the dealership and get it done. Got up nice and early and looked outside, and the clouds were just crazy low, and the sun was low because it's wintertime. And I thought, I better take the camera with me. And this was still a little early on in the game for me. Uh-huh. Driving to the dealership, and I thought, I'm gonna go a back way. I think it might be a little bit quicker. And it really wasn't a whole lot quicker. But as I came over a rise, I live in a rural area. Okay, it's farm country where I'm at. Just right. So you know, and I came over a rise in the road, and as I crested it, started to come over off in the distance, I see this massive barn out in this field, and I'm getting goosebumps. So the clouds are low, and as they're moving across the sky rather quickly because it's winter and it's a little blustery, there are breaks in the clouds, and I'm watching these rays of light. And I don't know if you've ever seen the rays that burst through the clouds, and they're walking across the countryside, and they're rolling over this barn. I'm not even joking about the goosebumps. I saw, oh my gosh, this is magic, and I think I can make a photo of this. Right. I raced down the road, turned off onto this side, dirt road, jumped out of the car with the camera, and just started firing shots off. And I looked at the back of the camera, and I thought, oh my gosh, this is what I'm supposed to be doing. I'm supposed to be making things like this so that I can run back and share them with people and show people. And that's what I did. I missed the. I've got to ask you, the barn that you're talking about, is it the barn? It is the barn. Yes, if it's the barn, then this is the perfect segue to show some of your pictures. So that's great. So for those of you, again, that are not familiar with Jamie, there is a barn, which you're going to see in a second, because he's shared a few pictures that I can show to you guys that he is notorious for. But I think it's so cool that he is actually kind of known for this barn, because while the barn has aged, and I don't want to take the story away, he'll tell you the story, but while the barn has aged, it's still the same damn barn.
right? So for so many of you, and myself included, I frequently struggle with the idea. It's like, been there, done that.
Right.
Not Jamie. So let me switch my screen over here really quick, because I want to share. He's got a couple of the famous barn pictures here. So this one's fairly recent, isn't it, Jamie?
It was from this past summer. Yes.
Okay, yeah, I thought this was from past summer. So go ahead, tell us about the barn.
Sure. Okay, let me just preface this with the fact that this is kind of internally in my home known as her or the mistress. She's kind of like my muse. My wife knows if I say I'm gonna go out and shoot a couple pictures of her tonight, she knows what I'm talking about. But the thing that Joe was talking about shooting something and being done with it, I've learned that, at least in the case of this, and there's a couple other things that I like to shoot, I'm finding that as I'm doing this craft of creating, that if I find something that really speaks to me, something that just for some reason has a connection with me, I want to keep revisiting it and capturing how its personality changes throughout the years, as the seasons change. I've shot photos of this barn in the morning and revisited it in the evening as a storm rolls through, just to see how the light plays differently off all the textures on it and how the shadows move across the barn. I really encourage people, if you find something that moves you, that you like to shoot, it's a little different with people. People age a little differently than barns, so photographing them over the years might be a little bit of a different experience. But as far as nature and wildlife and things like that are concerned, I like to find something and I like to shoot it over the course of time. When I first started shooting this barn about 8 years ago, there was a big tree that sat out in the front of it, which would be on the left-hand side of that image. And it was always part of the composition for me. It always played a role in how I set up a lot of my shots, framing that tree like in the corner of the image as kind of an anchor point in the foreground that just kind of added another layer to the image. And I witnessed a storm where that tree, was basically removed from my compositions. It's no longer there. And since then, I've seen the ends of the barns. The facade there has been blown open from windstorms, and I've watched it age. And there's been a couple of times where I made posts where I saw smoke off in the distance that was in this general area, and I've had people message me and say, "Oh my gosh, are you going to be okay? Are you all right?" I'm like, "Well, I'm going to go see if it's the barn or not." And I've been asked too, "What are you going to do when that barn collapses? Because it's going to fall. It's going to happen." And there will be a moment of sadness, but there will be some reverie. It'll be almost like a celebration for me that I was lucky enough to be there for a decade or more and witness its change and its progression through all these different states over the years and document them. I've seen tons of time-lapse videos that people shoot of themselves over the years, self-portraits, that are 5, 6, 10 years long. I'm kind of doing something like similar with that, with this barn, but instead of it being the same pose every single time, it's completely different light. It's different seasons. It's different weather. There are animals in some of the shots, the Aurora Borealis in shots, star trails over it. I've done so many different ways of shooting this, and I never run out because, as everybody knows, it's a photographer, especially people who shoot outdoors. There are no two shots that are the same. You could stand in the exact same spot on the exact same day of the year, the next year, and it's going to be a completely different image. So it's been part of my journey as an outdoor photographer, nature photographer, learning a lot of lessons at this location. I learned how to control the light 100% by shooting at this location, shooting in the evenings like this and trying to expose properly for the sky without having my foreground be pitch black, balancing exposures. Learned how to use filters primarily from shooting here as well to even further enhance my ability to evenly expose a scene. So it's been a fun journey with this barn, and lucky for me, it's not over yet. And like I said, I encourage everybody to find a muse like this and revisit it often if you can. It's a fun thing to do.
That's very cool. So before I let you go to the next set of pictures, Jamie, I want to give everybody a little history, and I'll let Jamie explain it. But the next set of images involve water. So if you follow Jamie on social media, you know that he has a thing with water. That thing is that he doesn't quite completely understand the difference between waterproof and weather sealed. Okay, because the Olympus cameras are weather sealed and damn good weather sealing.
Oh yes, for sure.
But Jamie, on 2 occasions this year, has decided to kind of take it to a whole new level. And as much as Olympus is amazing, it's not that amazing. So I'll let Jamie explain that. But these water images are actually really cool. Okay.
Yeah. All right. So let me just lead off with Olympus is a wonderful company to be sponsored by. They're very forgiving. In the Smoky Mountains this spring on a family trip, I wanted to get some product shots for another one of my sponsors, Vanguard, but wearing one of their backpacks and using their tripod and stuff. So I wandered out into the middle of a stream in the Smokies, standing on a rock about 5 feet from the edge of this 8-foot waterfall. And I'm posing, looking all cool, and having my son hit the shutter on the other camera that's on the bank. And I went to turn to come back and slipped and fell almost over the edge of this waterfall, but caught myself. Unfortunately, I caught myself with an EM1 Mark II and 12-100 in my hand, and those smashed into the rocks and sat submerged for a good 30 seconds, thus destroying those, unfortunately. And again, Olympus was kind enough to replace them for me. Thank you, Eric. And then more recently, I was leading a one-day workshop with a group of people here on the west side of the state of Michigan, and we were shooting fall colors and, well, what turned out to be weather very similar to what you see in the picture up here. And I was working my way back along a pier where there were big 15 to 17-foot waves breaking, and got close to shore in a safe area. I'd been watching, making sure no waves were breaking where I was at. And these two charming young English girls asked me, "Excuse me, sir, could you take a photo?" And I said, "Oh, yeah, I'd be glad to." And they hand me their phone, and I had my camera on the tripod, and I set it next to me, and I take a step forward to take their picture and feel this big splash of water across my legs. And the expression on the girl's face, I instantly knew that something was wrong. I turned around, and my camera and tripod were in the water about 4 feet deep. And that was a gripped EM1 Mark II and 300 millimeter f4, which was a gut-wrenching experience, to say the least. And again, thank you, Eric and Olympus, for being so generous and replacing that equipment for me. I promise I won't go near water for at least a week or two more. But testament to the weather sealing of the Olympus gear is the image you see here on the left, or on my left. I'm not sure what side it is for you guys. This is the lighthouse in Grand Haven, Michigan. This was on New Year's Day. Met up with a couple of other Olympus shooters there because we had checked the surf cam for Grand Haven and saw that the waves were just bashing into the lighthouse. And so this lighthouse, the red portion, is actually sitting up on about an 8-foot tall cement section. So the top of that lighthouse is pushing the 30-foot mark or so, a little bit over. So it gives you an idea of how big the waves are smashing and creating, this spray here. So this was shot with the EM1 Mark I and the 40-150 2.8 Pro with the teleconverter on it. So I'm on shore, safety zone. And as I'm shooting this scene, the winds are blowing probably about 35, 40 miles an hour really consistently. So it's hard to hold steady. Again, testament to image stabilization in the Olympus cameras. But over time, though, I noticed my shots kept getting worse and worse.
All right, gang. So we should be back now. It's starting to give me good numbers on the backside. So let me know, guys. Are you catching it now? Give me a little feedback. We'll see if we can get Jamie back in here. Okay. And I'm back. Awesome. So now let's see if we can get don't worry, I'm not going to do that. Let me see if we can get Jamie back in here now, guys. Jamie, I need you to go ahead and hit that link again that I sent you. And we'll see if we can get him fed back in here, okay? Let's see here. I'm going to copy this again, Jamie, just in case you're not getting it. And we'll see if we can get this feed to pick him up. Okay. All right, gang. So yeah, so at least you've got me back. We're just not getting Jamie back here. So bear with me a sec here. As soon as we can get Jamie to try that that link. Okay, so we're just going to reboot Jamie's browser because I've got everything up and running this side. So a little bit of patience. He's going to restart his Chrome browser and we will get this going again. Yeah, all the numbers are looking good. So yep, I'm back, guys. We're just waiting to see if we can get Jamie squared away here. Everything according to YouTube, we're good. So it looks like we might have had an issue on his browser, but we'll see. So just bear with us for a couple seconds here. He's going to reboot. And oh my goodness, Jeff Sweet, you want us to switch? Me do landscapes and him do portraits? Wow, that would be interesting. Okay. My problem with landscapes, for me, I'm not sure that I have the patience to do them as well. So here, I'm going to try this. Jamie's still having an issue here. Okay, now let's see. I think we can get him back in here. So let's try this. All right, so I've got Jamie's picture here. Now I just got to get him back into the... yeah, he's kind of back. They can't see it yet, but we're going to see if we can't get this squared away. One way or another, gang. We're just about there, folks. So bear with us, and we should be good. Whoa, there he is. Okay. So now I'm going to do one more and get him in the second shot so that you guys can see his pictures. And sweet. All right, let's try this again. So, Jamie, that's where we finished up, okay?
Yeah. So I'm not sure where I left off with people, but basically I was just talking about how weather sealed the gear was shooting in this situation. Again, where I thought I was losing focus and my images were getting progressively worse as we shot. It wasn't that it was the gear. It was literally ice accumulating on the front element of the lens at this location.
Oh, goodness.
So I tell people who are curious about the weather sealing on these cameras that I give up before the camera does. Every time, except for when I throw it in rivers and lakes. But aside from that, I usually will quit. I've shot in torrential downpours, thunderstorms, to the point where I'm just frozen and almost being struck by lightning and scared, time to leave. So, and the equipment never gives up on me. And so this is the same lighthouse. It's been undergoing like a renovation, so there's no catwalk on it in this image. And this was just from a few weeks ago, actually, as well. And again, it's part of that revisiting something and seeing it in a different light every time you go. And it's almost like a challenge, a personal challenge for myself. And I think it's part of what has helped me grow as a photographer, to revisit the same thing and challenge yourself to see it in a new way. And granted, you know, on the shores of Lake Michigan at sunset, it's really easy to see things in a new way every time because it's just gorgeous. But, you know, the barn is a good example of that, of just revisiting the same place over and over again and just trying to get something new out of it. And that is why this shot is here as well. So I had shot sunsets ad nauseum at the lighthouse in Grand Haven, to the point where it's like, it's beautiful. I love it. I want something different. So then I started deciding, you know, I better start paying attention to the radar. Storms generally in this region move from west to east. If you're looking out over the water, like this image is shot, you're facing west, which means the storm's coming off the lake. It's wide open and flat. You have plenty of time to watch the storms as they march in. And I knew that I wanted these shots. I wanted lightning over the lighthouses. And I actually told people I'm done with lightning at the lighthouses now for a while, because I had several storms this year where I got dozens and dozens of photos like this with tons of lightning in them. Using the live composite feature in the Olympus cameras is kind of how I do the lightning shots 95% of the time. Pro Capture is another way that I use it for daytime lightning photos. But yeah, it's kind of fun, you know, find a spot, revisit it, and then build upon those visitations to start adding new things. And I asked Joe if he could share like this image, and there's another couple that'll come up a little bit later. But for one thing, this has me in the photo, you know, yay, a little narcissism there, suppose some people might see that as. But for me, a lot of it is about just being in the place and knowing that I was in that place. There'll probably come a time when I don't remember these things as well. But what I wanted to show here, though, is the location where I was shooting from for the next shot that Joe will share. And it just builds on this whole thing. Not that one.
Oh, which one?
The other Griffith Observatory. There's
I'm sorry.
That's okay. Totally fine.
Okay.
There we go. So this shot is me thinking a little bit outside the box. It was cool to be up in the Hollywood Hills shooting Griffith Observatory that you've seen in the previous photo with a wide angle lens. But doing my research and knowing that I was going to be in LA and having seen a very similar shot to this, I knew that I wanted to visit and try something like this, which is, again, it's outside of the box thinking. Most people think they're going to shoot a landscape. First thing they think is, oh, wide angle lens. I want to shoot really wide. I want to take it all in. This was shot with a 300 millimeter f4 with the teleconverter on. So, I mean, this is as long as it gets on Olympus right now with standard Olympus glass. And it's actually a panorama. It's comprised of 5 portrait orientation images to create this panel. But the outside of the box part of the thinking here is if you shoot wide angle, like in the shot where you saw me in the foreground of this, LA is super far away in the images. It looks like it's a million miles out in the distance. By using that 300 millimeter f4 with the teleconverter on it, it brought LA like right up to the backyard of Griffith Observatory. And I had experience doing similar things with sunsets in Grand Haven, where that lighthouse was at. And I told you I was tired of sunsets because I think I've tried it all. I learned really quickly that a long focal length allows me to make the sun look massive, and it just kind of shortens that distance between things that are super far away in the background to those things that are in the foreground. It just kind of compresses the gap between them. And I knew that if I did that at Griffith, if I had a clear day, which obviously that doesn't happen in LA like ever, that I would be able to bring LA close to Griffith. And that's kind of what I did here. So it kind of goes into the whole mindset of, if you're traveling someplace that you've never been, this is my first time to LA, do a little bit of research, start thinking about, those money shots that you want to get, and research what it's going to take to make that happen as far as gear goes, settings that you're going to need. And then I, to be honest with you guys, I jump online and I do a lot of research based on what other people have already done that's similar to what I want to do. Flickr's a great tool for that, or, Google Photos, things like that. So I just did this, basic searches for Griffith Observatory, LA, and then started finding these images. That's kind of how I got there. But the next couple of images, so they go back to that thing that I alluded to in the previous couple of photos about place and time and being in that moment and being there. I've had a lot of people, not a lot, I've had a few people say, is it narcissism that makes you do these, these self-portraits where you're standing, in a scene? And in all honesty, I had a person very dear to me. My grandmother suffered from Alzheimer's, and watching her at the end stages of that, not knowing anybody, not recognizing, any of the people that were with her, not knowing anything that she had done in life. She had a very exciting and well-traveled life. And at some point we all get old. Maybe we don't develop Alzheimer's, but, you tend to forget some of the highlights of life, and I'm kind of building these moments, these images right here. These are for me. I do share them online, but in all honesty, they're going to end up in a book for me so that I can look back at it and say, man, I can't believe I did that. This was cool. Maybe it'll spark a little bit of memory. It'll make me kind of remember some of those highlight moments. And admittedly, at the same time, they do play well with social media, and sponsors kind of like being able to share stuff like that as well. But it's fun to challenge yourself to find a cool way to get yourself in a shot. And just like this, you never know when you're going to come across something super cool. And I want to remember the awe of being in those moments. And for me, standing outside of myself and looking at what I was a part of, it just kind of does that for me. It's not every day I get to see the aurora. It's not every day that I get to be dangerously close to lightning bolts. But it's kind of a cool thing to kind of relive those moments, a little bit through some of the imagery that I make. So while a lot of my stuff is nature and things like that, that everybody can really easily gravitate towards and understand and wrap their head around, those shots tend to be a little bit more for me. And I try to, show a little bit of the excitement that I'm living right now.
That's actually really cool. I have to admit, Jamie, I'm actually really jealous of that, because if I tried to get in the shots with my models, they just would not take that well, like at all. So that's not really an option on my end, but still, it is very cool. And as somebody that doesn't get into pictures that much with my subjects, when I do get pictures of me working, I'll admit, maybe it's that little bit of narcissism. Maybe it's just, like I did that.
Yeah.
Like talking at Photo Plus this past year. It's like the first time I ever did that. So like to get pictures of me on stage at Photo Plus, it was cool. Like
for sure.
It's like I did it. Like I'm excited by that. So
without a doubt.
I totally am with you there. So I have one question, and then I want to show you and the viewers an interesting little story, and then we'll do some Q&A here. But I kind of know the answer, but I would like you to share it. So how often do you pick up your camera?
Every single day.
Okay.
Every single day. So for those who don't know me, which is probably 99% of you out there watching this, I have a day job. I believe me, if this, here we go. If this was me 24/7, that would be the penultimate dream, but it's not. I have a day job. I work in marketing for a company that manufactures LED lights. So I have a commute every day, 9 to 5, or actually I leave the house at 7 a.m. and return at 5, but I always have my camera with me. It's always in the seat next to me. You have to have a camera with you. If you don't have a camera with you, you're not having an opportunity to make a photo, and you don't know when those opportunities will present themselves. For me, a pivotal moment in photography presented itself on the way to get an oil change, of all things, an oil change. And it changed my life, literally. And I'm not exaggerating. I've experienced so many things in life because I stopped and photographed that barn. So take your camera everywhere you go. There's no excuse not to have a camera with you, unless you're carrying, I don't know, like one of those big, giant, I'm not going to poke fun at other systems. I swear I'm not.
Right.
But yeah, take your camera with you every day.
So the reason why I asked Jamie to answer that question, this worked out. It wasn't that planned, but the reason why I asked him at that point, I was contacted by a gentleman last week after TogChat. This gentleman is a member of my Facebook group. His name is Donald Rack. And he sent me a link to a television story that was done about him and his photography. And I thought, oh, okay, cool. Let's see what this is all about. And it's a little 2-minute clip. Now, YouTube and this software don't always play nice if we try to run a video through it. But I want to show you guys the video in a minute, because the video tells the story better than I possibly could. But first, keep in mind how often, Jamie picks up his camera, and it's a passion that drives that, guys. If you're not hearing that when he talks, please don't miss that point. It's a passion that drives that. But I want to show you a few pictures that were taken by Donald, and some of you might want to rush to some judgments on these pictures. I would encourage you, if you have any respect for me or for Jamie, look at the pictures for a moment, but then watch the video. And if for some reason I can't get the video to play, I will tell you his story. I'll read the article to you and tell you his story. But Donald sent me some of these pictures. I asked him if he would mind if I shared some of his images. Okay? And so he sent me actually a full Dropbox full of pictures. And it's similar to the kind of stuff, obviously, that you guys see me do all the time, which I'm sure that's a big part of why he's a member of my group. He even plays around and does some cool Photoshop stuff where he kind of, made this old retro ad. Obviously, it's the same photo shoot here, but, he did some Photoshop work, a couple more shots here. So again, it's studio stuff. It's working with models, getting creative with doing some montage and some composite work in Photoshop, even a shot of his pet, okay? So the thing that I want all of you to see is Donald's story, because I think that this story is going to catch a lot of you by surprise. But I know that myself, and I'm sure even Jamie on a bad day, sometimes it's that extra hard push to pick up the camera, to do the work, also to remind ourselves that even when it is work, we are so damn lucky to be able to do that kind of work. So as long as I can get the video to play here, here is Donald's story. And of course, Is it gonna or is it not gonna? Let's see if it'll give it to me. Whoop. Okay. We let it buffer and it's gonna come in now. I think we should be good. It's probably gonna give me an ad first. I was really hoping to bypass the ad. The last time I did this, it didn't play the ad. It's not going to give it to me.
As we mentioned earlier, Hiawatha Homes Festival of Trees kicks off tonight with the annual gala. Funds raised throughout the week go toward the foundation's mission of providing homes and support for people with disabilities.
And tonight we have the honor of sharing some of those stories from inside Hiawatha Homes and some of the people that the Festival of Trees cares for. News Center's Barrett Leone spent an afternoon last week with resident Donald Rack.
So you know what, guys? I'll pause the video. So basically, Donald has Duchenne muscular dystrophy. So I'm going to scroll down a little bit here. This is a shot of Donald with one of the models that you saw in his photos. But, oh, you guys can hear it. Okay, so it's just Jamie and I that can't hear it. My apologies. I'm going to let it finish because I want you to watch the video.
Well, Tom, Linda, Donald is a resident at Hiawatha Homes who is living with muscular dystrophy, but that doesn't stop him from pursuing his passion for photography. What may look like a bedroom
just through my computer
is actually a photography studio.
Okay, and that's how you can step up.
Donald Rack says he's always been a creative person, dabbling in various outlets like 3D modeling, graphic design, music production, and now photography.
I was interested in it. I had friends that were into it, but I just never pursued it because I didn't think I could do it.
A notoriously spendy hobby, in 2016, Don was able to buy himself a DSLR camera with help from a GoFundMe campaign.
I just like doing it.
As someone with limited mobility, Don takes pictures with the flick of his tongue and the click of his finger.
I mean, if I can do it, there's no real excuse why someone else can't.
And with that first flash, he was hooked.
My favorite part is probably just like seeing his visions come to life after he's done editing and what he comes up with. Like the movie posters, those are, and the Christmas ideas, it's all him. And it's really fun to see it come to life.
Those visions usually come to life with the help from one of his nurses or even models from the cities. But a lot of the time, it comes from his friend and direct support professional, Natalia Gonzalez.
I was his very first model.
But not without demands.
Can you do this with your makeup? Or I bought this like fake blood, can we squirt this on you during the photo shoot? Like, and he'll just like give me the little ideas that he has, and the scarf, I can make that come to life and whatnot.
His creativity is liberating.
So I think like photography is like another window for him to like see a different view of what's out there.
It gives me a freedom, I think.
Well, if you would like to help Donald pursue some of his passions, you can check out the web version of the story. Reporting live in the studio, Barrett Leone, KTTC News Center.
So, goes without saying, it's an unimaginable situation for 99.9% of us that are watching this. And for me, when he sent me this and I saw it, like I jumped right away and I said, can I share this? Can I please share this? I've spent the last week with this video and with his pictures. I started writing things so that I could sound intelligent when I talked about it. And I'm not gonna lie, every time I wrote it, I thought that's ridiculous. It sounds stupid and it sounds contrived. Donald, I don't know if you're watching tonight. I know you're planning to. First of all, I have to say thank you for sharing this. What you're doing is amazing. What you're doing also makes me feel like the world's biggest wuss anytime I feel like I've got hard work to do. And I think more than anything, folks that follow me, that's what I'm hoping that you will take away from this. We are all so lucky. All of us are so lucky to be able to do what we do because we have the ability to move about and do it. We have the disposable income to do it. You know, there are so many people, and yet we all find reasons to complain. I do, we all do, okay? You know, I think that's part of the human condition, but you know, here's a person that is taking passion for creativity and passion for photography to a level that most of us can't even really imagine. So Donald, if you don't get to see this live, when you do get to see it, thank you so much for sharing your story. I will be reaching out to you again because there's a conversation I'd like to have with you. But from my standpoint, and not to blow smoke Jamie's way, but I mean this sincerely, like I have an excuse with my photography that I have to schedule a model, makeup artist, etc. And you notice I started that by saying it's an excuse.
Right.
Definitely. I watch people like Jamie that shoot every day and pick up the camera every day. And I talk about this. I mean, my method, and this doesn't make it okay, but my method of keeping that part of my brain active is from the time I was a teenager, I'm always looking for pictures. I'm always visualizing things. Because interestingly enough, my running joke, Jamie, is I don't do landscapes because I hate getting up in the morning and I don't like the cold. So that's my running joke. In the studio, I get to set the temperature. It works around my schedule, which is, is great. But one of the things I do, ironically, is when I walk my dogs every day, twice a day, we do a mile walk in the morning, a mile walk in the evening. Yep. That entire walk, clearing my head, is looking at pictures.
Right.
And it's frequently, which is kind of unforgivable for someone like you, but it's frequently those water drops in those leaves look so cool. I should have bought the camera. Or, and the challenge is, again, an excuse. If I stop to take pictures, the dogs are not happy. They're on their mission. But so when I come across people like you, Jamie, and even, with the stuff that Donald is doing, which is just hard to imagine, that passion is exciting. And I'll be honest with you, as much as I have a lot of passion, I cannot imagine my life without it. I'm jealous of people that have it to the level that you do, because it drives a work ethic, which is an incredible, work ethic. And I applaud Olympus. This is a conversation I had with Olympus long before anybody talked to me about being a visionary, but I applaud them as a camera company for having ambassadors like you and like some of the other visionaries that, as you said, have day jobs. Because, don't get me wrong, and I'm not taking a jab at a company like Nikon, having a Joe McNally as an ambassador, well, that's a great thing. I mean, but this is a man that is at the top of his game, who has worked for National Geographic. Most of the people that are using Nikon cameras or any brand camera are never going to reach that level. Here's a company that's recognizing not only the talent, because believe me, every bit of the talent is there, but also the passion. And they're recognizing that in people that have not shot for National Geographic. And obviously we have Jay Dickman, who does shoot for National Geographic as one of our visionaries as well. But also, they're recognizing the passion, and they're recognizing, the hard work, which for me, I thought that was a very, very cool thing when I learned that, about the group. It's like, nobody else does that. And
it's a weird thing for me, to be honest with you. I am in this group of people who are full-time professional photographers. Mm-hmm. And I'll admit, I feel like the square peg trying to be stuck into that round hole a lot. I mean, it's a weird position to be in. I don't ever feel like I should be in this. I love it. I'm not gonna question them on their decision, because I love what it's provided me.
Yep.
But it's an odd position to be in for somebody like me. I mean, I consider myself just the average dude. I've got a wife and 2 kids and 2 Shih Tzus, and I have a day job and a mortgage, and I'm just an average guy. I'm just blessed in that I love photography enough to where somebody noticed it.
Sure.
And don't be self-deprecating about not having a camera with you all the time and seeing those beautiful moments and saying, man, that's great. I should be taking a picture of it. Don't. There have been so many times I've been out and it's stellar, and people are like, oh my gosh, are you going to shoot that? And I'm like, oh, I am. Yeah. I'm absorbing it. You don't have to take one every time. The fact that you recognize it and can appreciate it is testament.
There's definitely a lot of value to living in the moment, for sure.
Yes.
I think that, as a photographer, to really get your work to kind of that next level, the living in the moment part sometimes has to wait until down the road. So I've been shooting for 43 years, so I don't mind living in the moment, and I'm I'm the type of person. I went to Italy. This was 5 years ago. I went to Italy. One of the things on my list, it's the usual things, the Colosseum, Leaning Tower of Pisa. I didn't photograph them. And the reason I didn't photograph them is I was on a tour. both places got there the middle of the day. So seeing them, and this is to take nothing away from their splendor, but when you see them for real, it's like, okay, I've seen a bazillion pictures of them. They're much smaller than they appear in the pictures, of course. The Leaning Tower of Pisa sits, with all these buildings around it. So it's like, really, like it always seems like it's out in this spacious spot. It's not, For me, the coolest thing at the Leaning Tower of Pisa, there's a little snack bar, literally 100 yards from it. My wife and I went in to get a soda, and we sat down, and this teenage girl comes in, couldn't have been more than 16 or 17 years old, clearly right after school, takes her backpack off, puts it behind the counter, puts a apron on, and she walks over to an ice cream counter at the window. And so she's standing at the window looking at the Leaning Tower of Pisa, serving ice cream to people. And I said to my wife, it's like, do you realize that girl just thinks that is so boring and mundane, right? Yeah. And we're looking at that like, oh my God. So yeah, like in those situations, I'm totally cool with like being in the moment and just taking it in. But I think definitely when I was younger and I was developing, it would have been all about like spend 3 hours and take pictures. And
you're 100% right. Looking at my Flickr stream, a lot of it's private now, the original stuff, because I watched the volume of images, and this sounds so strange to so many people. Right. The longer I'm shooting, the less I'm shooting, which sounds strange, but in the beginning it was, I would go out to shoot and I would fill a card and I would just, there'd be a million shots. And then over the course of like 2 and 3 years, I saw that every journey out, there are less and less photos, but as there are less, the quality increases as you go. So it's not that you're going to get to a point where you shouldn't always be taking photos. It's just, you're going to start off with a ton in the beginning and you're going to perfect and dial it in and get better and better and see better. And as you do that, you're going to shoot fewer and fewer. The quality is going to go up, but I still say shoot as often as you possibly can. You might not have to push the buttons many times, but shoot as frequently as you can. And don't stop. Agree. I don't know if this is like riding a bike. I'm terrified, Joe. If I stop shooting for a month, do I go backwards like 6 months in ability? Like I'm not going to find out.
Believe me, if I go more than a week without doing a shoot of some kind, it's like a stress thing for me. It's like, okay, this is just not acceptable. And at that point, that's when I will sometimes get desperate and I'll go pick up a camera and go out for a walk. And just to take me completely out of what I do, but just to use the camera, get used to, get the mind going kind of in that sense. My mind is always going in terms of looking for pictures. I'm big into shapes and symmetry and things like that. So even when I'm out in nature, I'm looking at stuff like that all the time. But yeah, if I don't actually have the camera in my hand, especially with all the traveling that I'm doing, if I don't get to pick the camera up, I have to like pick it up and go do something just to shoot it.
I can definitely sympathize with that for sure. I fear very few things in life, but there's a 3-letter word that has me terrified, and it's called rut. Yeah. And I hear people talk about ruts. I've never experienced a rut yet, and I'll tell you what, I'm scared. I think what I always tell people, because obviously one of the things that we find online, especially in some of the photo blogs, there's article after article after article about, how do you get out of your creative rut and that type of stuff. And honestly, this won't be a popular statement with those blogs, but I think those articles are more detrimental than they are helpful. When people tell me they're in a rut, they don't like my response. But my response is usually a wake-up call that is pretty effective. And my response is, well, then maybe you should give up photography. That's my response. Because if you're in a rut, that means your passion is lacking and you are not being motivated to pick up the camera. Now, sometimes what that tells us is we're shooting the wrong thing, or maybe we need to do things different. So, but it's kind of one of those things that, to me, it's not about going out and shooting more, like to kind of work through it, that kind of thing. It's more about take a look backwards and figure out, all right, how did you get to that rut? Why are you not, you were motivated a week or a month ago, now you're not motivated. What happened? And a lot of times that's what people realize. It's like, well, a week or a month ago, they were kind of in the work mode because they were excited about something, but now they're starting to realize, that's not really what I want to shoot. And so it's kind of, I'm sorry, I had to say, KB1, I feel like a damn idiot after hearing this and watching the video. I was too afraid of taking a photo of the New York City skyline because I thought I would screw it up.
Well, actually, Jamie, what are your thoughts on that? They hear me answer that all the time. Sure. What are your thoughts on that?
Okay, first of all, my initial response was that skyline's going to be there no matter what you do with your camera, so you're not going to screw the skyline up. But that's just like stupid humor. Realistically, I'm notorious for not getting rid of any image. I've got every single image I have ever shot. That's why I had to get a Drobo to store all this stuff. And the reason being that, for one thing, if you're not at a point where you think that you could capture the image properly right then and there, don't not shoot it. You might get to a point in software, and people hate this. Software might be able to help you at some point in time in fixing some of the things that you couldn't get right initially.
Sure.
Obviously, we want to get to a point where we don't rely on software to fix everything and never learn the proper way to do it. But in those cases, like if this had been like your first time to New York City and you didn't shoot that skyline because you thought it might be underexposed or something like that, you might have been able to bring out, you might have been able to do some software fixes. I just say, don't ever not shoot something. And you're not going to break anything by start turning them dials. It's too dark. Maybe I need to raise exposure compensation a little bit. Maybe I can open up the aperture a little bit and let in a little bit more light. It's too bright. Do the opposite. Underexposed. Don't not shoot. Always shoot. And you will figure this out over time. If you know the basics about exposure and how to control it using ISO and aperture and shutter speed and things like that, you'll figure this out. But just don't ever not shoot because you're afraid. There's no reason to be afraid. I'll hold your hand.
Agreed. I mean, that's it, gang. Just take the picture anyway, because just like, and I'll reference what Jamie was showing you with the pictures that he does of himself in the image. Even if your dream, KB1, if your dream is to someday be like an amazing travel photographer and be published in all the great travel magazines, let's pretend for a minute that that's your goal. You're not going to reach that goal unless you are doing what excites you with your camera. So I don't mean the travel part. Obviously, you're a travel photographer, okay, so you want to travel. But I mean the way you shoot it, the style that you shoot it, the time of day, the kinds of pictures that you do. If you're not doing what really excites you, you're not going to get to the point where those magazines will hire you. So, it doesn't matter what kind of photography that you do, and that's where rules are so dangerous. That's why you guys hear me talk about don't use 4-letter words, right? At the end of the day, you've got to do it for you. And sometimes doing it for you, just like those pictures of Jamie, he's got a very personal reason for doing them. The fact that they play well on social media and some people like them, that's a bonus. But that's not why he's doing them. They literally are a kind of a very self-serving purpose, okay? So KB1, don't ever worry about, the only time you got to worry about screwing a picture up, literally, is, somebody's paying you to do something and it's not going to happen again. Like a wedding. Well, you better have your act together before you go and accept that as a paid gig, right? I mean, that's just something you do out of respect. That's not even got anything to do with photography. But beyond that, my son played baseball when he was a teenager, and I coached for a lot of years. And we always told the kids, look, you can't steal second base with 1 foot on first. You got to get off the bag. You got to take chances. And that's really what it's about. So if you see it, shoot it.
That's right.
Simple. So we got some questions coming in, guys. Go ahead and start loading in some more. We got a half an hour here. I know, so a couple of you have said, Steve Wilkin typed in, you'd love to see Joe's eyes shooting pictures in nature and street photography. 2 guys, well, there's more than 2, but 2 that I've talked to routinely, Jamie and Mike, who are both from Michigan. Believe me, I am dying to shoot with these guys. So hopefully next year I get to participate in one of the visionary events where they bring all the visionaries together, or, if Olympus does, do anything exciting next year, maybe I get to, partake. So trust me, I can't wait to shoot with these guys. I think it will be a lot of fun, and more than anything, for me, I will tell you guys, when I get to go out with other photographers just for the sake of having fun, which happens about like once every 3 years. So that's probably one of the things I'm most excited about being an Olympus Visionary, is because I know they get to do it at least once a year. But for me, when I get to do that, I have a hard time taking pictures. It's not out of fear. It's not out of anything else. It's because I'm way too interested in studying the body language and the movements of the photographers that I respect. Because really what I want to do is I want to get inside their head. Right? I can't see the world the way they see the world. And so for me, that's the fascinating piece. Like I can take one of Jamie's pictures or one of Mike's pictures or any of them, and I can essentially deconstruct it in my head and understand the technical aspects of how he did it. I can look at the EXIF data. I can understand what lens, once I see how he exposed it, all that makes sense. That's the physics, right? Mm-hmm. But what I can't see is what he saw that drew him to that picture, right, that, made him compose it that way. So for me, when I do get an opportunity to shoot with people, that's my toughest challenge, is actually keep shooting, because I become like a complete people watcher. And I love just watching the thought processes, in that sense.
Can I use that as a segue?
Yeah.
So that a little bit different than your enjoyment of being in the group setting, but it's one of those things where we're always telling people, do a workshop. And I'm not just saying that because I lead workshops, right? Shameless plug, but the workshop environment it's an incredible learning avenue. It's one thing to watch a YouTube video or read a book or read something on a blog post. It's another thing to get out with a group of like-minded people that are there expressly for one thing and one thing only, and that is the passion of photography. And it's a very liberating and freeing experience, and it doesn't come just from the instructor who's there to teach you, but it's from being with the entire group. It's like this really cool social experience to do. So I would highly encourage, as a way to further your photography, to partake in some sort of a photography event. It could be a workshop, it could be an event at a local camera store. It seems like that's a huge thing all of a sudden in the last 2 years. It seems like local camera stores have exploded with tons of events that happen throughout the year, like Joe's doing here. But use that as a way to further yourself. And like Joe's saying, it's kind of cool to get into somebody else's head. You're both at the same place, or your entire group is at the same place. Everybody's shooting the exact same thing, and everybody knows, it's cliche to say it almost, that everybody's shooting the same thing. Everybody gets a different picture, but in those settings, you can kind of get it behind the scenes of why everybody's getting a different picture, what they're thinking that made them shoot it differently than you would have shot it. So I say get out there and learn that way as well.
Absolutely. Yeah. I mean, it's, that's one of the things I've done videos about, being in camera clubs, or, for people that do the kind of stuff I do, like joining a group like PPA. That's really the benefit of that stuff. And even like the big events like Photo Plus or WPPI, it's cool to go and see all the gear, right? So, we get gas, we melt our credit cards, but what's really cool about it more than anything is getting to meet and talk to like-minded people. I mean, for me, that is absolutely the best part of those kind of events. So, and even for me, in terms of teaching the workshops, selfishly, one of the things I enjoy most about teaching workshops is I teach myself.
Oh yeah,
because
every time,
and it's always the dumb questions, and I say dumb in quotes, folks, before you get mad at me. It's that question that triggers the duh response, and then you kind of catch yourself as an instructor and realize, okay, this person may be a complete beginner and they have no idea. And 9 times out of 10, it never fails. As I'm answering that and breaking it down and trying to make it simple for them, I catch myself, why do I do it that way? What I just explained to them makes so much more sense than the way that I do it. I'm taking a longer route to get there. Yeah. And then I come away from that, that experience, and I'm like, you know what? This is great. I can completely cut this whole 2 steps out of my process. This is so much easier. So, I find that in those situations when I'm having those conversations, it oftentimes makes me rethink a lot of what I do. And I don't care where your experience level is. So I'm just, giving you from my side as an instructor, folks. But, regardless of where your experience level is, when you're having those conversations, it makes you rethink, what you're doing. Obviously, I love it when you watch me on YouTube and watch videos. But when you're watching a video, you're not having a conversation. So, and you guys have all heard me say it before, if you're going to watch videos, if you don't go out and try what's in the video, you've just wasted however long the video is. If it's a 10-minute video, you wasted 10 minutes, right? Because otherwise you just got a head that's stuffed full of information, but you can't actually put that to use. You don't really learn it till you go do it. That's the key. So at least, in the workshop type settings or any of the big gatherings, when you're having those conversations and you're interacting with people, it makes you think through your thought processes. So there's definitely a lot of benefit to that. So I saw somebody say that they're afraid to do live composite. So Steve, man, don't be afraid, go do it. And here's my wish for you, Steve, don't throw anything at your computer. I really hope that the first time you try it, it sucks miserably, horribly, because then you have to solve problems. You got to experiment more. If you get a great result the first time, because believe me, live composite makes it easy. It really does. Okay,
oh, yeah.
But if you get a great result the first time, you're not going to be as motivated to really push yourself. And that's the thing. So you guys saw the video that I did with the portrait backgrounds. So when I got the Mark II, the EM1 Mark II, I saw all the cool live composite stuff that Jamie and Mike and all those guys had done. Even Frank Smith, who's one of the local visionaries to me, he had some really cool outdoor shots that he had done with architecture where he used it to get the clouds kind of all creamy and that really, really cool stuff. And I was feeling kind of cheated because like, this is such a cool feature. How the hell could I use it for portraits? So believe me, that stuff that you saw me do in the video, and some of you have seen me do it in person when I've been at my talks, the first time I tried it, I promise you, it did not look nearly as cool as when I do it now. Okay, you know, now I've got it down to a science, so I can replicate it really easy. Yeah, first time out, no, it wasn't that cool. It was pretty horrible. But you just keep playing, you just keep experimenting. So trust me, Steve, you can do it, man. It's not that hard. Just
yeah, quick tip, Steve. I think the easiest way, so when I'm working with people explaining live composite, I tell them, and I see that Jeff Sweets kind of jumped in and sort of answered it similar to how I do it. I tell people start off in aperture priority. Take note of what the settings are. You don't necessarily have to worry about where the aperture's at, as long as you have the aperture set for what you're trying to shoot. I mean, if it's something where you want, a lot of depth, then maybe start out at like f8 or something along those lines. But just take note of what the shutter speed listed when you're in aperture priority mode is. Then when you go back into manual mode and go into live composite, when you hit the menu button and it asks you for your interval settings, set your interval settings to what your exposure time was in aperture priority. That'll get you extremely close to where you need to be. From there, you could start adjusting either aperture or the interval settings. And basically the gist of it is the interval settings really should, I personally feel like it should be labeled base exposure, because that kind of is what exposes the base image that the live composite is built upon. Right. So again, aperture priority, take note of shutter speed, go back into live composite, set your interval setting to that exposure time that you found in aperture priority. It's really quick that way. And fail often, fail spectacularly. I think that's something somebody famous said.
Ryan, I saw your question go by. I want to answer that. But before I answer it, I want to do one other question. So Ryan, all of your typing, it won't go wasted, I promise. There was a question in here. Where to go really quick? Oh, son of a gun. There it is. Pierluigi. Jamie and Joe, how much time do you spend in post-production on your photos? So this is a good one because I think you're going to get two dramatically different answers here, okay? So Jamie, go ahead. Talk about I mean, if you give us an average time, but maybe kind of some of your philosophy.
Right. Oh, I love this. I love this question. Yeah.
Go for it.
Okay. So for me, I stated in the beginning of this when I was kind of talking about myself, I have a little bit of an art background growing up, different mediums from painting and drawing, things like that. So art is really big with me. So when I got into photography, the big thing with my images is my end goal is for my finished product to kind of represent how I felt, where my emotions were when I shot that. Every sunset doesn't look as dramatic as the ones that I post online, but that's how I felt. That came from here. So for me, the majority of the time, the image that comes right off the camera, I try to get it really close to being perfect exposure, everything nice and even. That's my canvas. Now it's time for me to get into the art studio, which would be Lightroom or Luminar or Photoshop. And now I start painting. Initially, when I first started doing this, the time it took me to paint my finished exposure was longer. I would spend 10, 15 minutes, 20 minutes on an image. I've gotten more efficient as time goes on, and I've gotten some pretty smooth workflows down. So I think I average probably about 3 minutes an image in my post-processing. But I'm not afraid to spend 5 or 10 minutes on it, if I want to get really intricate with dodging and burning. But for me, again, nothing is straight out of camera almost ever. And I love to dress things up to match my emotion.
Now, Jamie, I'm curious, before I give my answer to that, do you do any compositing? Like a lot of landscape photographers, in fact, I just saw a thing somewhere online today. I apologize, I don't remember where, but the guy was talking about the idea, and I've even done this with my model stuff, but he shoots skies. Anytime he sees a cool sky, he'll shoot wide angles, telephotos, verticals, horizontals. And, if he's got a great scene, but it doesn't quite have the right sky, he'll drop a sky in. Do you do any compositing like that, or you avoid that?
In all these years, I've done it twice. And those 2 times I did it in the last month and a half. And I felt embarrassed that I shared those photos for two reasons. One is the first one I shared, I thought this was stupid because anybody that knows anything about light is going to say, well, the sky's bright here, but the shadows are on that side. So what's that all about? That was dumb. And then the other one that I shared, 100% convincing, but it didn't convince this guy. And it just felt weird to me. And it's funny because I've had people say, well, what's the difference between doing that and doing what you're doing by boosting colors and lifting shadows and enhancing this and that? And I don't have an argument against it. It's just personally for me, I won't do it again. So it's not for me.
And that's cool. Well, yeah,
but I mean, when you're
art. Boosting contrast and all that kind of stuff, you're working with detail that's there. So, you're tweaking it, but it's there. So
now I will go a little bit and add a little bit more to that. I generally don't add to an image, but I'm pretty darn good at taking stuff out of the image.
Yep.
If you look at my landscapes, you point out a landscape to me taken in the last 2 years that has a telephone pole in it. And then you come to Michigan and say, man, there's a lot of telephone poles here, but where are they in your photos? They're my bane. They're the bane of my existence. I don't like telephone poles and transmission lines and things like that. So I will pull those out, but I try not to add things if they're not there.
So now I'm gonna feel horrible here because my answer to the question in terms of post-production time, if I'm really lucky and it's a simple shot and maybe like a studio portrait that somebody's going to use for actually tomorrow I'm doing a session for someone that needs pictures to go with a resume and a job application, right? So none of my crazy creative stuff, real simple lighting, real soft lighting, really easy. When she picks her final 1 or 2 images, I will probably wind up spending about 15, maybe 20 minutes per image. The bulk, well, I shouldn't say the bulk, but the basic work is actually going to be no different than doing Jamie's, about 3 minutes. That's going to be, color, contrast, sharpening, all of that kind of stuff. The stuff that's time consuming, blemishes, any flyaway hairs. In fact, this one tomorrow, I'm doing it as a favor, as a friend, no makeup artist, no hairstylist. So I know it's easily going to be a 15 to 20 minute retouch on the back end. And not that I need to change this person, not that I need to alter them. It's literally just going to be a matter of cleaning things up. Some of the really crazy shots that you guys see me do, like one of the shots that gets used, Olympus uses a lot to advertise my talks. It's the girl with the blue hair and the balls that are spinning around. Jamie's gonna fall out of his chair. That was just about 3 hours worth of work, start to finish. And it's composited, but really what took the time was the balls. So it was a simple shot. I mean, the picture of the girl is completely straightforward. There was no crazy Photoshop stuff to the girl. Even the reflections in the sunglasses, all that was there when the picture was taken. So I busted my butt to get all that in camera. And shot it on the same kind of blue background that it is on now. But it was just, it needed something. And I knew it as I was shooting it. It's like, okay, I love this, but it needs something. So what I wound up doing, I had these blue plastic like ball pit balls that kids jump into that I want to use for another shot down the road. So I took a couple of them out of the box and literally in the same lighting as the girl, just stood and dropped it and shot it. So there was in midair. And I wasn't getting as much blur as what I wanted, but it was soft and that was fine. So then I went into Photoshop afterward, took like 3 of them and started replicating them, then tweaking the sizes and laying them all out, and then added a motion blur to them. So it looked like they were falling. And it's like, that was okay. And then literally just on a whim, finally at about the 4-hour mark after everything is done, I thought, I wonder what would happen if I took these balls and just gave it a radial blur on top. And radial blur is one of those things that usually looks just horrible. It looks cheesy, but it's like, it was perfect. It was exactly what I wanted, but didn't know that I wanted it. So like I was done. So yeah, so, one of the things I would add to the statements now, because now you've heard, really kind of 2 extremes. The only wrong answer to that question, gang, and I apologize, I don't even remember who asked the question, but the only wrong answer to that, if you're trying to gauge how much time you're spending, you're the only person that can make it right or wrong. In other words, if you're not processing your images at all, and you think, well, this is great, like I spend no time, well, that's probably going to be wrong because you're not you're not getting the full potential out of your images. I don't care what genre of photography you do. Understand that raw files, just like film, are meant to be developed. Okay, so SOOC, straight out of camera, that's not a badge of honor. It's just not, right? It's nice when you could say, look, I've got this shot like 90% of the way there, even 95% of the way there out of camera. That's awesome. But it still doesn't really make it a badge of honor because it's not a finished picture. So pictures do need to be developed. If you're spending, I don't care if you're spending 5 hours on the picture, when you get to that 5 hour mark, you've got to be able to look at it and say it was worth the 5 hours, right? And if it's worth the 5 hours, then don't let anybody tell you that you're wasting time. If it's not worth the 5 hours, then you've got to be honest with yourself and kind of, you know, straighten up the britches and say, all right, where am I going wrong here? You know, am I shooting crap in the camera and I'm wasting all this time, which a lot of photographers do today. That's why you guys hear me say the Photoshoptographer phrase, okay? Like, you know, for me, and Jamie, by all means weigh in on this because you are kind of at the other end of the spectrum for me, but for me, part of what I love about digital technology, I'm thrilled to not shoot film ever again. Thrilled. Because what digital does for me is it opens up so much more creative potential. I mean, literally, if I can imagine it, I can create it, which is really, really cool. Now, you know, you're dealing more with Mother Nature, but I would not want to go back to the limitations, you know, of film in that sense. But at the same time, I find that there are a lot of kind of, shall we say, new and or young photographers that they're not putting in the legwork to learn the basics, to, you know, learn the exposure triangle, to learn things like the inverse square law, which even applies outdoors, to learn how to really make depth of field work for them as a creative tool. They're not learning this stuff. And then what they're doing is they're spending hours and hours and hours becoming Photoshop masters,
right,
to try and get a decent picture. Even that is not wrong because it's not my place to say it's right or wrong. All I see is a finished image, but I would discourage anybody from making that their process.
Right. You know, especially for what I'm shooting, right? You can, well, you can bracket shots. So now you've got like insane amount of dynamic range and you can do a lot of stuff with that. But what I find is really cool is, so the use of filters are really strong with me. It helps to be an ambassador for a filter company. So I get access to a lot of cool filters, but what those allow me to do is basically, so some of my images straight off the camera with the filters look like they would probably be done for most people. But what that does, because I'm done at that level right off the camera, now I've got that much more room to work with the file that I've got. So I think by understanding how to get a great shot right off the camera with everything exposed how it needs to be, now you've got a lot more creative options. And a great example of that is if you go out shooting landscapes, and I've been out with so many people in the sky, for most people, they look and they say, oh, this is going to suck. You know, there's no action. If I can see a little bit of definition in the edge of the clouds, I know when I get back with different techniques in post, I mean, I can make it go from a blah day to, oh my gosh, were you guys safe? That looks dangerous, you know? So learning what you can do with the tools at hand, both in the camera and then outside of the camera, I think are valuable. You don't necessarily have to push one to one extreme or the other, but just having the understanding of how they all work together and having those in your tool belt, I think is going to make you a good mechanic. That was a weird analogy, but you know.
Yeah, no, I completely agree. I completely agree. So Ryan, I told you that I would get to your question here because this is one that I get this a lot because I work with a lot of college kids with my wife being a college professor. So Ryan, he's got a multiple part question here. So let me try and get all the parts down. He says it may not be a simple answer, and it's not, and he accepts that in advance. But that being said, he's preparing to enter his final year of study for his honors degree in photography. He's finding himself in constant conflict with his tutor. So Ryan, I'm guessing you're from Europe because we would call him a professor or a teacher here. But he states, the tutor states that Ryan needs to find his own style. And when I present him with images, he states that they are all the same because they're portraits. Always try to mix things up, such as, let me find his next statement here, lighting, pose. Yet each time he gets the same answers. Am I missing something? So, Ryan, here's the tough part about doing the school thing, okay? So, because I want to be really clear, I'm not saying that going to school for photography is a bad thing. I didn't. Jamie, did you go to school for your photography?
No.
Okay,
no.
And that's cool. I'm completely self-taught, and I'm very proud of that. But just like anything else in life, so let's start with some what are hopefully some obvious things, folks. Just like anything else in life, there are schools with teachers that are really, really good, and there are schools with teachers that are not really, really good, okay? So, what determines the two, other than just simple teaching ability? If you've got a professor who has been teaching for, or tutor that has been teaching for a lot of years, and they are very set in their ways, and they were classically trained, meaning it was essentially beat into them. You use a rule of thirds, you pay attention to Fibonacci spirals, you use the exposure triangle this way, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. If they were taught the rules and they haven't been able to let go of that and to kind of explore on their own, then that's your challenge. And I'll come back and I'll tell you how you deal with that. And sometimes you simply get teachers that honestly don't care. It depends on the institution you're at. So all that being said though, I'm going to give your tutor a free pass for the sake of trying to give you some advice. And I'm going to assume that they are good and that they are actually trying to help you. Now, clearly they're giving you some tough love by doing this. And yes, just to confirm part of what you're thinking, Ryan, this person is messing with you. They're messing with you because, and I haven't seen your work. So if you're a member of my Facebook group, which I think you are, Ryan, I will give you permission to go ahead and post a selection of pictures, because normally it's only one picture with all the details. So you don't have to post all the details, but what I want you to do is post a selection of pictures and tell me what the assignment was and tell me the feedback that you got from this tutor. But what it sounds like to me, just based on the way that you've described it, is that this person is just really trying to force you to think and think outside the box. But now listen, because I'm going to talk out the other side of my mouth. Here's the challenge of being in school. It's good practice for when you get out in the real world. So when you graduate school, if you want to be a portrait photographer or if you want to do portraits for commercial advertising, you are going to have a client. That client, just like in any other business, is always right. Even though we know they're not, the fact of the matter is if you want to pay your bills and you want to be successful in business, that client is always right. So even though the client is going to hire you based on your portfolio might have every single picture shot in red. But if that client wants blue, you better shoot it in blue. That's just how it works. So right now, in your final year of studies, that tutor is your client. You need the grade to get your degree. So the challenge that you have is step outside your box. Even though you know what you like, even though you think you have a style, even though you feel, look, this is the way I want to do things, and this is what really excites me and really ignites my passion, the fact of the matter is, you've got a client. It's a tutor who holds the ability to give you a grade and is going to pass you or fail you, right? So that's the way you've got to approach it, because that's the only way you're going to survive it. You can't fight this person. They stand between you and graduation. So your only other option is go knock on their door and sit down and lay out your case. But don't whine, don't complain. Say, I need help. Tell them that you're trying. Show them, point out to them how you're trying to do what they've explained to you to do, and lay it out that way. But understand right now, they're your client. So you can use this as good practice for when you get out in the real world and try to make money. But if you want to post one of these assignments in the group, do so. And break down for me, this is what the assignment was, this is what I did, and then tell us the feedback that you got. And I'll try and help you get a little bit more understanding. But honestly, that's what it sounds like to me. It sounds like to me, this person is potentially seeing your potential, but they're trying to push you. Because you're going to deal with situations like this, except it's not going to be a tutor. It's going to be a client. And clients are messy. It's just not a simple thing when you're dealing with clients. Believe me, I spent most of my career that way. And it's, it's one of the things that is so great about teaching. I pick up the camera when I want to pick up the camera and I shoot what I want. So I'm kind of my own client, which is so wonderful. Okay. I spent a lot of my life dealing with clients, and yeah, it's not always fun. So I saw a couple Olympus questions go by, and Ryan Fisher, since it's the elephant in the room, I figure I'm gonna do it because I know Jamie won't answer this, but see, since I'm the new guy, I figure they can slap me on the wrist at least once, right? So Ryan Fisher posted a question a ways back, like, "Hey, are we going to give any insights on what's going on with the new camera that everybody's talking about and all that stuff?" So I finally, guys, I got a source. I've been talking to everybody. I've been asking questions like crazy. So I wanna switch over here my screen just so I can share this with you guys. My source is exactly the same as your source. My source is a rumor website. I have no source. The problem of it is Jamie and I are ambassadors. They won't tell us. They won't tell us anything. So yeah, it sounds like there's going to be a new camera. The stuff I'm hearing, so if you want my opinion on it, Ryan, based on what I read on the website, sounds pretty freaking cool. There's, I think, a lot of neat things that I know I can put to use. And I think there's a lot of neat things that are going to have really, really big implications for just about any and all future Olympus cameras. Technology that is going to start to trickle down. But yeah, guys, they don't tell us. True story, gang. Over the last month, I've spent like 4 or 5 weekends with Olympus employees, like people in marketing and even some technical people. I promise you, every one of them I've asked questions. Nothing at all. So, we'll hopefully we'll find out maybe a little bit before you guys. That'd be nice. But yeah, I don't think we're going to find out too early. But let's face it, these rumor sites, yeah, I mean, they have certain information that they get because permits and applications have to be filed when new products coming into the country. So I think that some of that information is probably going to be legit. But guys, I literally know as much as you do. So I don't know, Jamie, do you have any good sources?
All I will say is, look, you know how the company works. They release new cameras when they've got something ready to release. They always make some sort of innovation because let's face it, that's in my mind what Olympus is known for. And unfortunately, they're not known widely for all the innovations that they do come out with. So I would just say, just be prepared for something new, something innovative. And as Joe said, a lot of these technologies tend to trickle down. It's one of the beautiful things about this system is you don't have to buy into the highest end piece of equipment to get a lot of cool features. It's just when you start buying into the higher end, you get a few additional, bells and whistles, but it's just like anything else. I try to not live on the rumor sites because they're actually detrimental to a company. God forbid a rumor site says that it's coming out with X, Y, and Z and it doesn't come out with X, Y, and Z, then that can hurt stock prices, that can hurt sales. So I don't think it benefits really anybody to sit over on rumor sites and perpetuate that stuff.
Amen. Yeah. So, yeah. Hey, there's a question here for you, Jamie, because I don't actually use this, but I think you've been talking about it or recently. Deck Luck asked if you use Luminar and specifically if you're using the A1 Sky Enhancer.
Yes, it is incredible. So as a landscape photographer, like we talked about a few minutes ago, I'm always trying to get the most out of the scene that I can. And again, I was saying that my workflow has sped up drastically. And part of that, I think, is because I'm really getting my head wrapped around Luminar and using it efficiently. It seems like I have to do a little less legwork in Luminar to get the same output that I would get in Lightroom. I think for anybody who's interested I'm not sponsored by Luminar. They don't pay me to do this. I don't get anything from doing this, but I would say buy it. It's a buy once, get free upgrades for life kind of software. It's not like anything else out there. If you do buy into it, go into it with an open mind and understand it's not Lightroom. It's not Photoshop. It's a little different. It does a lot of the things that those do. It's laid out a little bit differently. There are features coming to it that I think will be a big sell for people, like the data asset management, the DAM feature. Right. Hope I don't get you banned on or downgraded for saying that, but but the DAM function of it will basically make it like Lightroom. I say go for it. For the price, they have a crazy sale going on right now too.
Yeah, they do, and I think they extended the sale. So
good. Oh yeah, then do it. I mean, because you get, I believe, Luminar and I think Aurora HDR.
Yep.
So just go for it. You can't beat.
for a company that's obviously going up against the big fish, with Adobe and that, I think out of any of them that are out there, Luminar is doing the right stuff. And the one warning I will give to people, and Jamie, you can tell me if you disagree with this, okay? But
sure.
I always tell people, do understand it's a completely different approach.
Definitely.
In terms of the UI, the interface, some of the naming conventions, that kind of stuff. So you got to go into it with an open mind, with the idea that you're learning a whole new process. And it was the same, it was the same for me when I went from Nikon to Olympus.
Yes.
I mean, everybody's like, oh, the menus, all this. Like, I had no problem with that stuff. I went into it with the open mind. It's a new camera system. You're going to start from scratch. So you're going to do that with Luminar. But in terms of what it does, what its capabilities are, pretty amazing software.
Yeah.
So two last things we're going to finish with here, since I'm blaming it on Jamie, gang. So I'm like way over 90 minutes, right? So it's on Jamie, okay? So the first one was, oh gosh, where'd it go? Oh, this was a question about the about Capture One and the EM1 Mark II. So and I can't see the question, but I remember it was there. The question was, can you tether to Capture One with? Oh, there it is, with an EM1 Mark II. EM1 Mark II. The answer is yes and no. Actually, let me reverse that, guys. The answer is no and yes. So Capture One Pro does not support, so listen close so you don't get mixed up. Capture One Pro does not support tethering to the Olympus cameras. It does support the Olympus RAW files. So what you do, and honestly, this was one of my concerns, guys, when I switched from Nikon. So I talk about it in my video. That means you haven't watched my video, right? When I switched, that was a concern of mine. Was I going to be able to get my workflow down? Olympus has a piece of proprietary software. It's called Olympus Capture Software. It's free. It's a free download. I was not happy about that idea. I thought, oh, this is going to suck. It'd be like working, where you're using some of those other software programs and you set a hot folder in Lightroom, yada, yada, yada. Olympus Capture Software is about 4 times faster on the download than Capture One, which is about 10 times faster than Lightroom. So it's real simple. All I do is I launch Olympus Capture Software, I set my folder, I set my file naming convention, then I launch Capture One and assign a hot folder to that folder, and boom, it's every bit as fast as what I was doing with my Nikon before. So basically that's the way you do it. You're adding an extra step, but you only do it once in the shoot. You do it in the very beginning of the shoot when you're setting up, and then you're done, you're good to go. It's like super, super easy. So a really good parting question. Newt asked here, what is one intermediate skill or knowledge that you wish more self-taught photographers should learn that is usually taught in school? So Newt, since neither one of us actually went through school, I still think it's a great piece to finish on. Those of you that follow me can pretty much bet some of the things that I would throw in there, but it's a great question for Jamie. So like if for beginners, for people that are just starting out and really, they've got that passion, but they're still trying to find their way, what's the piece of advice that you give them? If you can only give them one.
You know what? Okay, look at, I'm tattooed up. I'm gonna say break the rules. I don't know if they, again, no formal education in photography. I learned by shooting thousands of photos, and along the way, I was constantly told, well, that tree should probably be a little over here. It's not really following rule of thirds. And then I went into this period of time where that's all I thought was, oh my gosh. I mean, hell, I've got the Fibonacci circle tattooed on my body. I mean, I eat and breathe and sleep this stuff. And I know now that even though you're told, there are rules that go along with this, break them and learn how breaking them can work. And when breaking them is just breaking them to say you broke them, just think outside the box. Don't just be your own shooter and just do your own thing. I hate when people follow the pack. And I don't know if that was anything valuable or not. I mean, that's just where my head is at with photography a lot.
That's pretty much perfect, Jamie, because that's what I tell everybody all the time. So you really answered for both of us. So real quick, guys, 2 last things. All right, make sure, and I posted all the links in the chat window earlier, but they are also already posted underneath the video. Make sure you check out Jamie's website, follow him on YouTube. If you're a Micro Four Thirds person, Jamie and Mike Baining, who is also an Olympus Visionary, they do every 2 weeks, right, Jamie?
That's correct.
They do a show called Mirrorless Minutes, which is normally on Wednesday nights, actually right after I am on.
Yeah.
So you get a half-hour break to grab a cup of coffee when I'm done. and then you stay online and you watch Mirrorless Minutes. So check them out. And next week, gang, I have another guest who happens to be an Olympus Visionary. It is Tracy McGlasky, who is located in Ohio. Tracy does amazing shots like what you see on the screen now. She also shoots newborns and weddings and portraits. So the cool part is, as visionaries, Tracy and I kind of overlap a little bit in terms of the type of work that we do. So she's going to be here next week. I'll be posting links and all that stuff so you guys can check that out. Jamie, thank you. I'm sorry that we lost you in the middle there, but I'm glad we got it back. I really appreciate your being here tonight. I can't wait until we actually get to shoot together, so I'm hoping that Olympus makes that happen really soon.
Amen.
I will do anything with you as long as it is nowhere near water. I'm on it. So, all right.
They don't want to replace 2 sets of cameras.
Yeah. Exactly. All right, gang. So look, you know the drill. We are like way over 90 minutes. So before you come back next week, you got to double that. All right. Pick up the camera, go shoot, and whatever you do, remember these words.
Thanks for watching another live episode of TogChat. Now, pick up that camera and shoot something, because your best shot is your next shot. So keep learning, keep thinking, and keep shooting. Adios.